I call what is this, April? The April installment meeting to order. The installment of the TAC, Transportation Accessibility Advisory Committee. And before we get started, I will just acknowledge that we do not have a quorum, so we will not be conducting any official business, meaning we will not be approving the minutes, the previous minutes, or anything like that as well. But, and as we get started, I'll have Carrie acknowledge the Dakota Land, Water, and People Acknowledgement Statement.
The Metropolitan Council acknowledges that the land we currently call Minnesota, and specifically the 7-county region, is the ancestral homeland of the Dakota Oyate, who are the present and active contributors to our thriving region. As part of the Metropolitan Council's commitment to address the unresolved legacy of genocide, dispossession, and settler colonialism, and the fact that government institutions, including the Metropolitan Council, benefited economically, politically, and institutionally after the forcible removal of the Dakota Oyate. The Metropolitan Council is dedicated to instilling land, water, and people commitments in regional policy. These commitments support the Dakota Oyate, the 11 federally recognized tribes in Minnesota, Ho-Chunk Nation, and the American Indian communities representing over 150 diverse tribal nations that call the 7-county region home.
Thank you, Carrie, for that. And from what I understand, we'll be reading that statement going forward. We'll take turns. I think Kevin and I had just made an executive session. We'll take turns. Each month, a member will decide to read that statement. So we'll get familiar with that statement. And then going forward, can we take attendance, Kevin, please?
Oh, yes. Chair Fenley, absent. Vice Chair Paulson.
Here.
Member Sam Jasmine. Chris Bates. Patsy Murphy.
Here.
Ken Rogers. Jeffrey Daines. Carrie Sheldon.
Here.
Michelle Severson. Eric Hendrickson.
Here, attending remotely, if you can hear me.
Online. Patty Thorson.
Here.
Heidi Myrie. Claudia Fugli.
Here.
Richard Rowan. Andy Streisick. Cheryl Schmidt.
Here.
Julie Sellner.
Here.
Doug Cook. Here. And that's it.
Do we, and how many of those had excused absence?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8.
That's it. The 8 of them were excused.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's interesting. Thank you. So then going forward, we will not be able to do our approval of the minutes or anything like that, but we will have presentations from, I believe, Cindy Harper. Are you here with Network Now and your partner there? Mark Christensen. Sorry about that. Mark.
No worries.
Welcome. Thank you for being here. TAC.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for the invitation, and to Doug for helping coordinate this. I'm going to just start off with some high-level comments, and then Mark is going to do the majority of the actual presentation today. Network Now is a project that's been going on for about the last 2+ years that actually just went before the full council last week for action. So I know normally when we come to this group, we usually like to kind of explain how, what we're looking for from this group and what kind of, what we need feedback on. In this case, this is the at least third time that we've come to this committee to talk about Network Now in the past 2 years. And so isn't really an action item per se at this point, since the council has already taken action last week, but did want to make sure that we closed the loop. So we did have a number of changes to the plan that we put out last fall for public feedback. And so wanted to just close the loop and let you know that this project has finally crossed the finish line and is already well on its way towards being implemented.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Chair, committee members, thanks again for the Thanks. Chair, committee members, thank you for the opportunity to present. So the Network Now framework are our improvements from 2025 through 2027. It includes improvements to new or redesigned routes, frequency or span improvements, metro line investments, as well as micro transit throughout the region. We are resolving the status of routes that are currently suspended, some all the way since 2020, as well as associated facility closure needs. This work is built upon data, performance being details, network performance, changes since 2019, and opportunities, as well as policy. This is based on the regional policy guidance from the Metropolitan Council that is applied, which includes what's coming out of the Transportation Policy Plan, those guidelines for how transit service operates. It also includes engagement. This is encompassed by multiple rounds of engagement from values to specifics, with nearly 8,000 comments we've received on this work. Next slide, please. We connected quite a bit in 2024. We had 25 community events, including events held primarily in other languages. We had 35 municipal and county public briefings, 15 committee as well as other presentations. We invested 420 hours of onboard transit center intercept work and handed out materials to over 4,000 customers. This involved a lot of work from planners like me in our office, actually going out and talking to customers riding transit and talking about those improvements that were happening on routes that people ride every day. Rider alerts were sent out, as well as interior cards, newsletters. We did a lot of work on social media, connecting with various audiences, as well as partner collaboration and more. All in, we received about 1,600 comments, and 29% of those responses were from individuals with disabilities. This couple of images on this slide here. So at the top right, this is an image from one of our community meetings. Folks participating in the process, listening to a presentation and providing feedback. And then we also have an image there at the right that is a sample comment form that we asked folks to fill out in order to contribute information towards their feedback on this plan. Next slide, please. So we heard a lot of information within this public engagement process, and so I'm going to walk through some of what those comments are, what we changed within our plan, as well as what that means in terms of specifics. What are some examples of kind of opportunities we had to revise this work? First comment is support for investments in the Metro network, and so we added resources to the Metro network in response to that. So G-Line Phase 2, this is the part south of downtown St. Paul, was added. That will be happening in 2028, as well as related local route changes within Dakota County. The Gold Line extension, which will be to downtown Minneapolis at 10-minute frequency, replacing Route 94, is also added, which will be happening in 2027. There were requests for more frequency and hours of service on routes. And so we added frequency and service related to those themes. Some examples of this are more hours of high frequency service on 6 routes. So having longer spans of that high frequency service throughout the day. 6 routes will start earlier in the morning and end later in the evening, so giving folks more opportunities to use the service. Saturday and or Sunday frequency improvements on 11 routes. We really focused on how our data has shown that travel patterns have changed. So people are using transit in a similar way throughout the week. And so offering those consistent schedules with consistent times throughout the week by making those improvements on weekends. We also heard desires for express routes with all-day service, and so we improved midday frequency on our key express network routes, which I'm going to talk about in just a little bit. So 15-minute service during the rush hours and hourly midday service on the 5 key express network routes we've identified within our Network Now plan. We also heard desires for more service later at night. And so we added service and increased frequency later into the evening. This means that we have additional service after 1 a.m. on 4 routes, the 10, 18, C, and D lines, as well as 30-minute service until the last trip on our highest frequency routes that run 15 minutes or better for most of the day. Oh, sorry, next slide, please. Perfect. My apologies. I didn't realize we switched over. We also heard desires for suburban to suburban connections in terms of and so we added frequency and restored service. Some examples of this are most suburban local routes will operate every 30 minutes or better, as well as all suburban local routes will operate at least every 60 minutes or better. We had requests for desired connections to various places throughout the region, and so we have additional routes that are restored beyond what we initially said in the concept plan. That includes routes 27, 156, 672, 758, 763, 765, and 766. We also heard a lot of requests for route simplification. We heard from people that think that there are opportunities to have the system be simpler, easier and more intuitive to use. So we remove some branches and patterns on routes. And so we have a simpler overall structure on several routes. We heard requests for more micro service. And so while we appreciate and understand these considerations and concerns, we're going to continue to work with stakeholders in defining microzones. We have a very ambitious plan already of microzones that we would like to implement with this in this time frame, and we're going to focus on doing that as our workforce allows. Next slide, please. So what does this all mean? From the draft framework, we have some changes. So 48 routes that have improved frequency over our draft network. 7 routes will be restored. 3 routes with significantly new coverage. Service is expanded by an additional 5 percentage points from the draft framework. 54% of Network Now framework additions are improved frequency on weekdays and weekends on local routes. So most of this is going into those additional access in terms of more trips. 19% of changes are on transitways and related local routes. Next slide, please. In terms of what this means for in-service hours, which are the hours that the buses and revenue service, framework will be a 40% increase from 2023. And we're already making progress towards implementing all of this work. Our March 2025 pick will be a 7% increase from 2023. So we're already making progress towards achieving this work. More of our service network will be comprised of BRT and Metro Micro. Service network by the end of 2027 will actually be more in service hours than we offered in 2019. So we are reinvesting a lot of service and growing over what we have previously offered. Progress is already underway to implement improvements on routes throughout the region, like I just noted. As of March 2025, we'll have 25 routes that have improvements over our baseline level of 2023. Next slide, please. All right, so this map here is showing our high frequency routes as well as segments of routes that are high frequency. So that means service that is 15 minutes or better from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. for the most part on weekdays. And so within this map, you can see the arterial BRT routes that are in gray, the blue line, green line, orange line, gold line, and then local routes that are labeled with their number in purple. And then also on this map are these metro micro zones. Those are the green blobs, I guess you could say, throughout the map. And we're showing that there are opportunities to connect with these micro zones, these new opportunities for a different mode of transit throughout the region. So there's new weekday high frequency service on the gold line, as well as extension to downtown Minneapolis, the green line extension, as well as our new ABRTs opening within this time frame, the B line, E line, G line, as well as this new high frequency service on routes 22, 58, 74, and 515. So with increased frequency, you have opportunities for shorter connections, shorter travel durations, and greater access to different destinations throughout the region. Next slide, please. So this map here is showing our Network Now framework by number of weekly trips. So you'll notice that the microzones are on here as well. And then we've got lines that are in 3 different colors. So let me walk through what those mean. A line in red is discontinued service that has operated pre-pandemic. If it's a orange line, that's discontinued service or a lower amount of service than what offered as of our baseline of 2023. And then that blue line, the blue lines on here, are the Network Now service that is going to be offered by the end of 2027. And all of these lines are shown by the number of weekly trips in terms of the line thickness. So where you see a thicker line, that's more trips that are going to be offered. And so throughout the region, we are reinvesting some service into greater frequency on more routes. And so opportunities to offer additional service than what we have previously offered and meet changes in travel patterns and travel demand. So within the Network Now framework, we have 70 plus routes that will see frequency or span increases, 26 routes that will operate 15 minutes or better, 10-minute service on the light rail, 8 new microzones, and within this, we are discontinuing 50 routes, most of which were commuter express routes that operated, most of them not since the pandemic, as well as 12 routes that have been restored. Next slide, please. What are our next steps? So these specific changes will be implemented as part of our quarterly regular service changes from this year, 2025 through 2027. The improvements will be sequenced on Metro line implementation, bus fleet and operator availability, as well as ridership growth. For discontinued service, we will begin to remove signs, close park and rides, and update system maps. And we will have a progress report in 2026 to offer some additional feedback on how this work is progressing. Next slide, please. And the full project report is available at metrotransit.org/network-now. I will note that there are multiple appendices to our report, and we do have all of the changes by route detailed that can be viewed. So you can look to see exactly what changes are happening on every route throughout the system. And we'd be happy to take additional comment as well as questions.
Well, thank you. I believe it's Mark and Cindy, sorry. Yeah, Cindy, and you're right. You've been here about 3 times. I remember the last time when you were here, and probably the time before that. So that would be the 3 times. But and the last time you were here, I believe we were developing a pamphlet of information, a trifold, and you were trying to include information from our committee into that pamphlet. And folks on this committee, if I remember right, were kind of taken back by that right at the moment. So I'm not gonna rehash any of that, but what I will say is, out of the 70%, the 70 routes that you're proposing, or out of the network now, what percentage of network now is operating currently? And you know, and that brings you into 2027 with the 70 routes, and I'm more concerned about the 12 additional routes that were created, and where were those created at, and so forth. Those were just my questions, but really before you answered them, I wanted to see online if there was, I wanted to kind of do the reverse and make sure that folks online got their questions answered first. Anybody online have any questions?
Daryl, this is Ken. I have a question. This is Ken.
Go ahead, Ken.
Can you hear me? Okay, okay.
I can't, it took a minute.
Yeah. So, and I'm sorry, I couldn't find my raise hand sign, so I just kind of waited. Just a comment related to the graphs that were presented. You identified in one of the graphs that the data was represented by the thickness of a line.
Right.
I just want to reiterate that differentiation like that is not readable from a screen reader perspective. So those different widths of lines that indicate some important data are not able to be understood by people who use screen readers. There needs to be a physical characteristic that separates them that a screen reader can identify, and those are letters or symbols from a regular keyboard. Thickness, boldness, italics, none of that stuff can be identified by a screen reader easily. So I didn't look to see if the information in the appendices was in a data form or a table that would be better suited to be able to discern that type of information easily. But just a FYI.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, thank you very much for that feedback. That is a very good point, and we certainly were looking at reducing the number of images we had here. We did go with just a couple of those maps, but that's really good feedback. The materials that are available on the project website, which includes the full report, does have alt text and the other regular accessibility requirements that we need to follow have been taken care of. But certainly if you see that, if there is something that we've posted that you want more information on, we'd be more than happy to provide a breakdown of exactly what is on that in terms of what is on that particular map or chart or table in terms of specific routes and information such as that. So we'd be happy to do so.
Chair, committee members, I would add that these maps should have alt text that are provided here with that information shown in a written format, though if it's not, we can definitely address that. Thank you.
And in the presentation slides, I did not find any alt text that clarified those things.
Thank you, Ken. Any other questions
Yep.
online? Before I go to any questions, hot and heavy here in the chambers here. Seeing none, any questions? Go ahead, Patty.
No,
Patsy.
no, I was shaking my head.
Go ahead, Patsy.
Oh, Patsy. I was just questioning, what is a metro microzone?
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, that's a fantastic question. So Metro Micro is a former service that the council started approximately 3 years ago with just one zone in North Minneapolis that was a pilot project. We are looking to expand from one of those zones around the region to 9 by the end of 2027, which is kind of the time frame for Network Now. It is essentially on-demand bus service within a zone where you don't have to schedule ahead of time. So we've called it, for example, Uber with a bus, where you have either an app on a phone, or you can call to make a ride, but you can't. It's similar to a demand response service, only you don't schedule trips ahead of time. They're available on demand. So we have right now we have 3 of those zones up and running. We have one out in the Woodbury area that is meant to take the Gold Line that just opened a couple of weeks ago and extend the reach of that service even further beyond where the actual Gold Line stations are at. We have a zone also up in the Roseville area that is focused on Rosedale Transit Center, where the Metro A line is. And so the idea again is to bring, to really help feed customers who who live in lower density areas, places that aren't usually very effective to do traditional fixed route transit service, where you have a 40-foot bus, on a very regular schedule, where that's not a very viable model. This is a way to still provide the access in a way that makes more sense. If you're familiar with, most of the other suburban providers have something very similar to this. If you're familiar with MVTA has something called Connect, Southwest Transit has Prime, Maple Grove has MyRide, and Plymouth has a version as well. So this is our version of microtransit. We call it Metro Micro.
What was your third area? You said you had 3 areas currently?
Yes, our first area was North Minneapolis, which was a pilot zone that we started back in 2022, and that we've made that permanent as well. So we hope to have that plan to open 2 a year between now and the end of 2027, which is pretty ambitious. That's why we didn't, as much as we had a lot of requests in the public comments from last fall to add even more microzones. Everybody wants a microzone. We thought that we already had bit off about as much as we could chew with 2 zones a year, getting those launched, making sure we're doing those right. We didn't want to commit to something higher than that weren't confident that we could do. Obviously, if we have extra resources and think we can do more than that, we'd love to. But for now, we didn't want to overpromise. So there's 9 zones totally in that plan. 3 of them are already up and running. The others are tentatively focused on 98th Street Station and 35W down in Bloomington. That'll be a connection with the Orange Line. Northtown, so they're all at various transit centers or connecting in with transitway lines. So Northtown, which will be the future F line. Maplewood Mall, which would be the future Purple Line. The Northern Dakota County Service Center in West St. Paul, which will be the future G Line. Out in Minnetonka, connecting in with the future Green Line extension. Brooklyn Park Starlight Transit Center, which would be the future Blue Line extension. And am I missing one? Probably.
Did you do Mendota Heights?
Yeah, Mendota Heights is the future G-Line one. So the idea is that they're really kind of spread in lower density suburban areas around the region for the most part, which tends to be the trend nationally on this type of service as well.
I'm sorry about that, Cindy, but I'm eager about this project, and I'm also concerned about this project because you've got local officials out there, mayors particularly, and also city council members that are pushing the micro transit versus the BRT because of cost and because of implementations of construction and things like that. And I just think it's ambitious to look at micro transit. However, I do work with a lot of providers and a lot of folks that serve people with disabilities and seniors, And microtransit today, if I was to use microtransit, it would be similar to like for me, I would have to, it would almost be like a standby ride, because they weren't taking on demand until a little bit into the summer in terms of how I would be able to access it. So unless I knew all my rides ahead of time, microtransit would not work in the way that it's designed to work. And I do fear that a lot of service providers are giving a lot of misinformation to their clients in efforts to kind of keep things the way they are, and kind of, keep putting their money on the go-kart and things like that, the way it's traditionally been done, versus when you suggested everybody move over to micro-move. It took a lot of time for the agency side to do that, and we're still having the what would you say, the repercussions of that today.
Sure. Mr. Chair and members of the committee, I'd like to clarify a couple of points of what you made, and I certainly hear where you're coming from. Metro Move, or Micro-Move, sorry. Micro-Move, too many words that start with M, is very different than Micro is very different than Metro Move. It's very different than Transit Link, Metro Mobility. It is open to anybody. It is not like Metro Mobility or Metro Moves, where those are programs that only certain customers qualify for. They're open to the general public. The idea is that the service area that we serve is usually a pretty small zone, maybe about 5 square miles. We dedicate a certain number of buses within that zone. And the idea, if we're doing our jobs right, and this is kind of the way it's worked out so far in the zones we have enough service available that when a ride comes in, we're able to meet that demand within roughly 20 minutes on average. Sure. So there isn't the need nor the ability to book rides in advance, because we have enough service out there to ensure that when a request does come in, that generally we're able to meet that request.
I think I follow you here a little bit, but I'm just gonna make sure. So is micro move or micro transit, would that be similar to like the 219 that circulates them around the Maplewood section there? Or the 216 rather? Mm-hmm. Is it the I think it's
19.
219 or 216.
Yes. Chair and members of the committee, it is a little bit different in that the Route 219, as really is true with any route that has numbers attached to it, is what we would call a fixed route.
Fixed route. Oh, okay.
So that's where there's a set routing, there's a set schedule. Every day you just go to the stop and the bus is supposed to be there at that time.
Sure.
This is more flexible. It's designed, in order to be able to support that traditional type of service model, you have to have a fairly significant concentration of customers, either because of employers or significant destinations or in residential areas. So you tend to see, for the most part, Minneapolis and St. Paul and maybe some of the very, what I would call first-ring suburbs are dense enough and are developed enough in a way to be able to support that. But generally speaking, the further that you go out into the suburban areas, you see a lot less dense land uses. You see a lot less pedestrian-friendly environments in terms of infrastructure, sidewalks, just comfort, even being, not in a vehicle. And also, it becomes much more challenging to provide service that meets, that is a relatively effective in terms of productivity and some of the standards for performance that are in the transportation policy plan. So microtransit in general, and we call it Metro Micro, but anywhere in the country, is really it's a new take, a fresh take on demand response service that's been around forever. And it's different because it is something that you can, you don't have to schedule in advance. It is, but at the same time, it is still the idea that, the driver, where the driver goes from trip to trip depends on just as the trip requests are coming in, very similar to how, Metro Mobility or Transit Link works. You don't go and stand and wait, you do need to request the ride. But the idea is that it doesn't just take you to the places that are along one certain bus stop. It'll go anywhere within that zone.
Takes you within the destination where you want to be.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, committee members, I'd just also like to add that the efforts to expand micro are in combination with efforts to expand out BRT as well. We have just opened the Gold Line in March.
BRT is awesome.
Yes, absolutely. And the B line is opening in June, the E line in December, and then continuing to open up arterial BRT lines with the F, G, and H lines. And then there's another effort happening right now to identify the J, K, and L lines too. So this is opportunities to work on both, offering additional microzone possibilities while expanding out the BRT network.
The reason I was more concerned about the micro stuff is because I know those buses are typically smaller.
Yes.
So in my terms of myself, if I was to ride with my family, there's the 2 spots that are on the bus. And then if there's other folks along the way, which then probably wouldn't be, right, so it's on demand.
It is, but it's a shared rides service, and so.
The other folks, but typically it wouldn't be depending on what time of day I'm riding or.
It really depends on, depends on the time of day and.
Where I'm going.
Yeah, yes.
Go ahead.
So,
Claudia was holding her hand up way longer
Were
than
you?
you, Doug.
Go ahead.
Doug, your staff.
I was ignoring her.
Sorry.
Okay, couple of questions.
We'll come to you too, Doug, since these are your guests.
Can the go-to cars available also on the micro ride?
Yes, ma'am.
And the fares, are they the same as the
Same as fixed route.
transit fares?
Same as the fares on Metro Micro are exactly the same as the regular fixed route. The buses have fare boxes on them. They have the readers for go-to cards. If you happen to, a limited mobility fare, like the 1 cent right now for Metro Mobility on fixed route, Micro qualifies for that as well. It's the same policy in terms of transfers, unlimited transfers within 2.5 hours, just like it is on our fixed route services. If you have the TAP card, which is the card for lower income folks, lower wage fares, we accept that. So it's no different than getting on a regular bus route like you see running up and down 5th and 6th Streets outside here.
And do you also go on the west part of the cities?
Metro Transit currently only has 3 zones, one in North Minneapolis, and then Woodbury area, Roseville area. We are looking to expand further out, but those are currently the 3 we have. There are, Metro Transit is the largest provider in the region, but we're not the only fixed route provider in the region. And so all of the other providers, which tend to cover parts of the West Metro, Maple Grove, Plymouth, Southwest Transit, which is Eden Prairie, Chaska, Chanhassen area, as well as Minnesota Valley, which is South Metro. So that's more like Egan, Apple Valley, Burnsville, Shakopee area. They all have a form of this as well. And actually, they've been doing this for several years. We're newer to the game than they are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Your turn.
Now it's your turn, Doug. I think,
Well, thanks for coming, guys.
unless there's any other.
Yeah, so to
members that
address
wanna go first.
Daryl's question, he's going to bring his family along. What I understand is that there's always 2 priority seating locations, and I think there's like 8 seats.
Generally, yes. The buses are the same model buses that we use on Metro Mobility and on Metro Move and Transit Link. So yes, generally the setup is the same. When you do request a ride, whether you do it through an app on your phone or you actually call in and talk to a dispatcher, there is a spot. All the vehicles are are accessible, and there is a spot for you can check if you are bringing a mobility device, and if so, how many. And then the software knows, since there's multiple buses in that zone, for example, if there were 4 people who all had a mobility device that were wanting to go, it would know to send 2 different buses to do that.
So since I work in a community, I work with a lot of individuals in the community, disabled, ELL, seniors. What I'm finding is seniors are really interested in this option for getting around. And just to kind of clarify just a little bit more, like Cindy said, she says like a 5-by-5 mile. Like if you took the center of like Roseville and you went 5 miles all the way around that, that's kind of the zone, but it connects with regular service. So it's basically going to bring you across town, basically, but you can also go farther if you jump on one of our other services. Is that right?
So it acts as a feeder, right? It acts as a
Yes,
feeder.
it does. Yeah, absolutely. The idea is to bring people into the greater regional network.
Right. That's why the mayor's like it. I'm not so happy about it. You haven't sold me on it yet, but keep going. I'm at the table with you. I haven't
Okay.
left yet. So
Great,
thank you.
great. Thank you.
Anybody else have anything before I let them go? All right. Well, you did really well.
Thank you.
You stole my thunder about the gold line, but I'll tell them all about it. It was awesome. It was a great time. It was fun.
Thank you.
All right, and then what do we have next? We can do the introduction, Metro Mobility's customer service manager introduction.
Sure. Okay, this is Julie. She's the new customer service manager at Metro Mobility. She's taken over Andy's old position.
So where did Andy go? That's what I want to know.
Andy is still in our office. He is working, he's an assistant director.
Ooh,
Yeah.
well, good. We'll be, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Julie. Can you give us about 30 seconds to a minute of your, well, 30 minutes would be good too, because then it would cut off some of my time, because these people don't want to hear me talk about the gold line and all the fabulous things that we're going to do over the next several months, because I'm going to make Kevin and I be a team, and we're going to do it together. So, and we're going to do it with your help, right? So, just tell us a little bit about you. Tell us why you wanted to come to Metro Mobility. Why does anybody ever want to come to a system such as Metro Mobility?
Well, first of all, thank you for allowing me to introduce myself at the beginning to everybody. Thank you very much. I probably am not going to remember all your names, so please feel free to tell me your name. If I'm not responding to you, please yell at me. I'm just hard of hearing. I'm not ignoring you. Some people have to hit me upside the head. Cheryl's only done that a couple of times, but I actually come from one of the largest providers in the area. I worked with Laidlaw, then First Transit, and Transdev, and have 23, almost 24 years of experience working with Metro Mobility, Fixed Route, Dial-A-Ride, Transit Link, Micro. So I have this vast background on all public transit. A couple of my locations were specific to Metro Mobility, and I oversaw both their operations, maintenance, safety, financial reporting, ensuring that complaints were not only just heard, but addressed, and that operational issues improved in order to improve our customer service. So public transit has always just been in my heart. And I'm very grateful that the Met Council and Cheryl and her team have accepted me. So I plan to be here for a while. If you have any problems, please let me know, okay? Thank you. I know that was about a minute, wasn't it? I will work on that.
Thank you, Julie. I'm going to tell you, I seen your name come across my desk most recently, and you and I will have a talk about that offline. But I will tell you, thank you for being here. Thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for taking Andy's spot, even though Andy will be greatly missed.
Well, maybe,
And he
some
will,
sorrow for Cheryl. but-
and we'll definitely bring him back. As far as Cheryl, I don't know much to say about her. She's always smiling and always happy when she comes to the committee. So she doesn't get to interact with me like Andy and some other folks have. So, but when I talk to you today, Julie, I'll have Cheryl be with us so we can talk this out. Because there's something very serious, and I would put it on the record today if my partner was here. But she would have been here to also address this. So I'll address it offline with you, and then I'll bring it to the committee when and if it's appropriate. But I would like to say thank you for being here and just understand that we are a committee that likes to do things. We're a committee that likes to get involved. We're not a committee that likes to be a rubber stamp for anything. So I'm going to ask, and this goes to Ken's point, because we have not had really any extensive metro mobility reports lately for quite some time. So I know Ken looks at data and he looks at some information on those reports, and that makes him be able to be the person that he is and advocate for the folks that he advocates for. And so I'm going to expect, Julie, that you come to this committee with some information, you come to us with some details that we've been consistently asking for years. And we get them once in a while, or we get them for a few months at a time, and then it stops. And then we have to restart it again. So I'm just going to make sure that Cheryl knows as well what I'm referring to. And I know Ken's listening and intently there. So he's either going to tell me I'm wrong or I'm right. Either way, I want to hear his comments. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Thank you.
Yeah, Daryl, you're absolutely right. We have multiple reasons why we exist as a committee, but our primary responsibility is oversight for metro mobility. There are other responsibilities, but that's one of the major ones. So getting ongoing and updated and regular data sets about performance measurements for metro mobility is something we really need in order to stay on top of how metro mobility is servicing the clients we represent. So however that looks to you, I think that's probably negotiable with the chairs, but we need regular, ongoing, consistent data measurements provided to us on a regular basis. Now, that doesn't necessarily have to be monthly. It could be quarterly. I think you can negotiate that with the chairs, but we need some regular, ongoing, similar data so that we can see for ourselves what the statistics are showing, how Metro Mobility is servicing our colleagues, and to be able to ask questions and make recommendations from there.
Sounds good. I can make a commitment to that. I'm a very analytical individual, so I'll be able to provide that, and we'll start that at the next TAC meeting. Does that work?
Yeah, works
great.
Work with Kevin and the chairs, and we'll get that going. Thank you, Ken.
Yep.
And then it also says next that I'm going to talk about the operator recognition award discussion. I don't know if any of you remember the awards that we gave out in 2020. Did we give them out in 2023? Because we didn't give any out in 2024. We missed it, right?
23, we did.
Yeah.
So we gave out 5 awards in 2023, and it was 1 to each provider. And then it was 1 with a mainline driver from Metro Transit, and it was a reservationist from I believe, Metro Mobility Reservation. I want us to do better this time. I want us to put our names in if we know drivers, and most of us only connect with drivers for the most part. Some of us connect with reservationists, and we get the same reservationists whenever we make our rides. But a lot of us just interact with drivers for the most part. So I would suspect every one of you should come up with 1 or 2 names of drivers that you would want to recognize, or maybe support in saying that they did a good job. Okay? I would want us to do this and have this policy or this project done by the beginning of summer so that we could recognize those drivers in a time when they do a pick change or when they do a route change within the system. Because then we'll be able to pull some of the administrative staff, we'll be able to pull some of the drivers and stuff. And I'll work with Doug to get him to work with me on making sure that we're more involved in that process than we have been. And I mean, I do like the awards that we gave, but I think it behoves us that 2 of the people that we gave those awards to are no longer working in the system. So that means that those awards really meant something to the ones that are still there, and they really didn't mean anything to the other 2 that aren't working there. So it's to us, because we are leaders in our communities and we are leaders within our districts, it's to us to pull out some of those drivers, some of those reservationists, some of those administrative people that we know and recognize them. And when we do that, we potentially get 6 months to another year out of them. And that's not a joke. That means we're saving money and we're investing in real people. And I think that's what we want to do. I think the administration was excited about it, and they looked for us to do it on an annual basis, but it's a lot of work. So maybe we can figure out the names this time, and we can use some other names that we didn't get through this time. We can use them for next year. So we can already start planning this as an annual event. And what I would say is maybe not do it the same time every year, but do it maybe at different times throughout the year, so that whenever you see driver recognition, you don't just see it in the wintertime. You don't just see it in the summertime. You see it in the fall time and the springtime too. So that is my goal for this project, and I welcome at least maybe 2 to 4 other folks with me to maybe create a more of a streamlined process, and maybe a particular questionnaire, or a sample questionnaire as to what questions we can ask to get some real good stories out of our system. Does it?
Gerald, this is Ken. I've got a question.
Yes.
So I'm a little concerned about Just Tech making the recommendation and the nomination for drivers. That could look like we're favoring. We have our favorites, and we're doing something about that because we're able to do that. I would like to suggest an idea that in the development of a streamlined plan, we look at asking our riders, asking all of the riders that use Metro Mobility, if they have a nomination for a driver that goes above and beyond. And then our committee can gather those nominations and make selections. But I would rather it come from the greater ridership, then it should just come from our committee.
Absolutely.
Just
Ken.
a suggestion.
Absolutely, Ken. I guess I didn't convey that messaging clearly enough, but yes, on my way here today, and so in the last several weeks, I've been talking to drivers, I've been talking to riders on the system, I've been talking to all kinds of folks. So, and as I was coming here today, and one of the drivers asked me what I was doing, and the customer was on there, and so I asked her if it was okay if I told him, and she said absolutely. And so I was telling him, and she was like, well, I know of a driver that I would want to recognize right away. And she said, his name is Tim Hines or Hayes or whatever, and it happened to be the driver that we were riding with.
Okay. Oh my God.
Right. But I did not know this, and we did not know, neither one of us knew this. So it really became a really good story. It really became a real interesting ride. And it turns out that the guy never has ever picked me up before, so he claims. But he's been driving for 25 years. So I kind of pulled him back on a couple different stories, and he's like, oh yeah, I remember that time. Oh yeah, I remember that time. I'm like, well, so do you remember picking me up? He's like, oh yeah, now that you mention it, I do remember it. You know, and so it really was, and this whole time, this client or the other rider that was with me, and she was really super, super nice coming from Stillwater, going to somewhere else. She was like, well, I really hope that you tell the committee that Mr. Hayes so-and-so is a really excellent driver, and he should be recognized for the commitments that he's done. And I said, I will absolutely do that. And so it's those kind of stories that lead me to constantly know that our drivers, whether it comes from us personally, and I don't ever mean it to come from me personally, right? I want it to always come from the greater ridership of the system, right? Because the system is only as good as the riders that ride it. So if I ride the system weekly, I can tell you it's a good system, right? But if I know somebody that rides it more than weekly, they ride it like 4 times a day, which is more than a weekly ride, then I'm going to listen to those people. And so I typically listen to seniors. I typically listen to the people that go to dialysis and people that use the system for a reason, not just a social reason. I know we like to do social things too, but I really rely on those folks that use it for a particular reason, and that's the stories that I hear. And so I want to bring those stories to the table, and I want those drivers to be recognized, and the reservationists as well, and some riders go out of their way to help other drivers too. I mean, you don't know how many drivers tell you in the middle of the night they don't know where the hell they're going, and they're not supposed to ask their customers, but then they do it. And a lot of times it's, the driver begins to trust that customer, and it begins to blossom into a beautiful relationship, trusting relationship. But at the same time, then you get Metro Mobility staff say, don't listen to your customers. They don't always know where they're going. They don't always know where they're getting dropped off. I'm like, well, some of us do, because we ride the system so much. So I don't know if I went off my tangent there, but I guess what I was trying to say is I need committee members from our committee to formulate a real fast track committee and maybe 5 questions, and we need to just submit names and run with it, and we can tie it into driver recognition or operator recognition, where Metro Transit does it 3 times a year with their mainline drivers. So then that they'll plug in their press folks and any folks that will push it out. Because I think last year, if we would have, or 2 years ago, if we would have had some press on it, we would have understood the reason for doing it on an annual basis and the need for it. Go ahead, Patty. Sorry.
Either a peace sign or
Yeah,
a question, I don't know.
Shut up now, talk. Now I can talk.
Two thoughts come to my mind. One, is there a way that we can get access to the online customer feedback form where you're able to, you know, if you have Joe Schmo, Metro Mobility driver, is there a way that we can pull from that as one way of pulling nominations or whatever?
There is online where you can put in comments and things like that.
Right, and so could we draw from? Yeah,
Right, so Cheryl,
we pay.
in Patty's comment, she suggested that, you know, like when drivers get recognized or get marks in their record that say they went up and beyond or they were recognized because of extraordinary behavior or extraordinary service. Can we see some of that stuff? And I mean, maybe we cannot necessarily see some employment data because it's protected, but we should be able to see a name. We should be able to see how long they've been driving and what kind of service things that they that they went up and beyond with.
Yeah, I know where you're going with that. Yeah. It's just that what we do is we can take comments from online and we'll put in a commendation for that particular driver or particular person. And then we send it to their manager and then the manager will give them a commendation for that. But we don't necessarily have a system to say that this is the stats from this person or this is the comments.
Yeah.
Could Metro Mobility send a message out to the other providers saying that we're looking for nominations or other driver extraordinary accommodation type stuff, and then you could say, if you know of any drivers, please send it to this email address, and then you could forward that stuff to the committee or to.
Well, what we could do is run that by Andy, the assistant director, and see what that process is. We put out surveys a couple of times a year, and that's basically what you're asking for, is for a survey to be put out into the field.
Okay.
So let us look.
I don't know if it's a survey per se, because I think the survey would take too long, and then we would be in the next year for recognition already again. But so I think it's more of a, you know, are we allowed to have some of that data and see some of that data?
I don't think that would be a problem. I think the problem is how do we approach ensuring that all passengers that ride on a regular basis have the opportunity to provide feedback and making that a fair approach. And so that's something that Cheryl, me, and Andy can discuss on the best approaches to put that out into the field. And when I say the field, into the passenger's hands. So forgive me if I'm.
No, I understand your terminology and your lingo is going to be different when when you're working with consumers than it is when you're working with administrators and providers, and so it's just going to take you a little bit to get used to it. Sherry, it's Sherry, right?
Sure.
Or Cheryl.
Close enough.
And then it's Julie. So Julie, it'll take you a little bit to get used to us, and we'll give you time. We'll give you time. We've given Andy several years to get used to us, and we've given Cheryl a couple years as well. So we'll give you at least 6 months.
Thank you.
Strap it.
Daryl,
Yes, Ken.
This is Ken. I would like to make a motion to establish a small working group that will work on making recommendations to the full committee about how this recognition program might roll out. And that group should work with Andy and Julie and Cheryl and figure out some recommendations for how that program should work, and then bring it to the full committee, and we can tweak it from there. Tweaking it now as a whole committee is not very effective. So I move that we do that in a small little task force, and then that task force reports back to us what they've determined, and then we can massage it from there.
Great. So Ken Rogers has made a motion. Anybody have a second on that motion?
I'll second it.
And Carrie Sheldon seconded. Let's. Now we've had much discussion on that motion. So I don't think we need any more discussion. But if there is any more discussion, let's have it now. Otherwise, let's vote on that motion. No discussion. So let's all vote on that motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Abstain. But, so, we're good on that. Ken, we'll be in contact with you on that committee. You can chair that committee if you'd like.
That wasn't part of my motion.
Well,
I think you walked into that one, Ken.
It might be part of my motion at that moment, but will you accept a friendly amendment?
Not at this time.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Ken. Appreciate it.
Yep.
So then, the next thing is just a couple committee reports. And I'm gonna let Ken do his committee report first, since his will probably be a little smaller than mine. And then if Chris.
Sure. And
go ahead, Ken.
Okay. So the Blue Line Extension report, I sound like a broken record, but there's nothing really to report at this moment. We haven't had meetings for the last several months, but we do have a meeting scheduled next week, Wednesday, in which I shall get some updated information. I know one thing that has occurred is there has been a final recommendation for the stop that I'm calling is the North Memorial Hospital stop. There was a recommendation initially made on how that station stop would look, but it involved flashing arms that would close off intersections at times, which concern the hospital because of medical emergencies that might have to stop or go longer or whatever. And so the committee was asked to look at different alternatives. There were 19 other alternatives that were looked at as possible alternatives. And I believe we now have an established preference. And so we will get final confirmation on that next week. But I think that's pretty, and the anti-displacement work has continued to move forward. So we should get an update on where they are with their work as well. That's about it. Sorry, I don't have any more exciting news.
Well, that's pretty exciting compared to I haven't heard nothing from you for a while. And we don't have nothing on the green line because Chris Bates is not here, correct? Correct. So then the other two lines we're looking at are the gold line and the purple line. As you heard earlier today, the gold line has been in operation since March of 2025. It opened on March 22nd, I believe, which was a Saturday, I believe. And it was really amazing. It was, I had been working on that project for the last five years, I think. For 2 of those years, I was the co-chair of the Community Business Advisory Committee, the CBAC, which I think Ken's familiar with the CBAC with in his project with the Blue Line. And then I stayed on as a TAC member, as a representative from TAC to the Gold Line. The Gold Line opened on time and under budget. That's what I'm gonna tell you. That's exciting news. That's the biggest thing that the Gold Line will tell you that they've done with the future expansion to Minneapolis coming in 2027, I believe. So we're pretty excited about that. And also you will hear BRT very much complements microtransit, and microtransit very much complements BRT. So you will see a lot of projects going forward where those two forms of transit are kind of paralleling each other and working with each other, but separate. Okay, so that's gonna be interesting for us to follow. I don't have much for the Purple Line to tell you about because they just canceled the CMC Purple Line meeting at the Met Council for this month. So I don't know about the Purple Line per se. I do know that our mayor in Maplewood is particularly holding that up. So you can yell at me all you want because the mayor and I differ on transit and how that looks for the East Metro. But at the same time, we do know that the East Metro just desperately needs transit. And one of the ways that we provide transit is to put the Purple Line there. However, there's other folks that believe we could do it using microtransit, and we can do it using other forms of transportation. However, I tell them to show it to me, right? Well, you know, show it to me. If you're a transit user and you're a transit rider, show it to me what you're talking about, and then I'll believe you, right? But the mayor has never once showed us any formative, viable, vetted plan. She's came up with concepts with people in the community, but she's never once sat down with the community and really looked at this. So what I am urging her to do is talk to folks with disabilities in the community. So what happens is, let's say people walk down my street and they run into the mayor, right? We live on a county road. I don't know what the mayor's doing on my road to begin with. She lives in my neighborhood, but I don't know why she's on my county road. But anyway, so they're coming down the road. The citizens are saying, well, Mayor, can I talk to you for a minute? And she says, yes, talk to me. And they said, well, wouldn't you want to put sidewalks along County Road C here? And they're like, and she's like, well, why would you want that? And the residents would say, well, because it makes it easier for Daryl and Nikki to get up and down the road, right? And she looks at the residents and she says, I agree with you. Maybe sidewalks are needed, but are they really needed just for two residents, Daryl and Nikki? So that's the disconnection that my mayor has with county services and county roads. She believes because other residents are advocating for a sidewalk along the road where I live, that they're only advocating because of Daryl and Nikki needing that sidewalk. And I call BS on that because her seniors walk up and down that road all day long, going to the mall, going to places where they go, and they would benefit from that sidewalk as well. So just because people are in wheelchairs and they benefit from a sidewalk doesn't mean other people don't benefit from those same types of services. And so that is my little soapbox on that, and I apologize for that, Eric, because I know I caused Ken to get off the screen, but Eric, you still stayed on there with me, so. Is there any questions you have, Eric, for me or for the team?
No, I don't. No, not at all. Thanks for checking out.
All right. Anybody else have any questions for me, or did I do a good job or did I do a bad job? Can we rate your chair today?
Good. Oh.
Good, I did good. At least I heard that from Metro Mobility. They haven't heard what I had to say to them yet, though.
I have
All
a
right.
question for you, though.
What's the question? Otherwise, I'm gonna call adjournment in any minute here. What's the question?
Hearing you talking about the sidewalk bit, because of all the work that I do at the Capitol and stuff, and I'm always thinking that way. Okay, the person says about for Nikki and Daryl. Well, what about themselves? Are they saying that they could use it, or do they not walk up and down the road?
Right.
Or even your mayor or whoever.
That's what we're trying to get at.
You know, somebody needs to make it be known that it's not just you two.
Right.
It's putting a face to it and making it tangible, and then trying to make it right. That
And discrediting it at some point.
Yeah.
We can't do everything for Daryl, Nikki.
right, but the people are also going to have the potential in the future for needing it.
Right, of course, of course. And most of it is because it's a county road, so it's gonna require the county to agree to an extensive overlay when they have already did the road to begin with. So they should have put the sidewalk in while they were doing the road.
Right.
That would have been the best thing to do, but
Would they take part of the road, would they move it in, or are they going to take away from
no,
residents?
They take part of the road. It's because that road's too big. That road's a little bit big anyway.
Oh,
I mean, but actually, what they'll do is they'll take the 3 foot the 3 foot right away on one side. So it will take from one side of the residence. Hopefully, it's not on my side. If it's on the other side, great. I'll run up and down that sidewalk all day long. But if it's on my side, it's going to be difficult. Because then my Metro Mobility bus will have a hard time getting the lift up and down, things like that. Because of the way the grade is for the driveway, they already have that issue. So as long as they do everything to the other side of the road, I'm good. I want the sidewalk, right? But that's the whole thing, not in my backyard kind of thing. Yeah. That's what we hear about transit all the time when we take away, intimate domain and we take away right away for transit projects. We hear it. As long as it's not my backyard, I'm okay with it, right? Yeah. But bring it to my backyard and I'll deal with it. So I don't want it in my backyard, but if you bring it there, I'll deal with it. I'll be okay with it. So having said that, I think we have a lot of work to do.
A question for
What?
Cheryl and Julie.
Okay?
I don't know if you can answer this or not, but this would be something to come up with in the future. This is regarding dispatchers. I don't know how they work, but something's got to happen where they can work together. So I'm not coming out of Robbinsdale, ending myself into northeast Minneapolis when I'm going downtown. There's got to be something.
With routing and, yeah.
There's got to be something done with, or there's 3 of us going to the same address and 3 buses are showing up. Something's got to happen. Something's got to communicate here. So this has got to be something we can discuss in the future about how they work together.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if it's their computer. I don't know if it's lack of communication. I don't know.
Yeah, make it make more sense.
I know when I was riding, pardon me, to and from, this is Patsy. I was riding to and from one of my jobs. And I was getting picked up, and literally we would go, I'm in Bloomington, we'd go to Eden Prairie, and then we would drive literally right past my house on Old Shakopee Road to East Bloomington, and back and forth they'd go. They told me it's due to the computers. It's how the computer sets it up. Now, I thought maybe that was lame. I don't know. I really don't know how it works.
Well, we can definitely, when that happens next time, give us a call and we'll look into it. We'll have the provider look into the how they're scheduling it. Are they scheduling it correctly? Are they not scheduling correctly? Because, there's going to be a maximum on board time and they're going to be within those parameters, but sometimes rides don't make any sense and things like that. So definitely, call us when that happens, and then we'll put the concern in and go from there.
Because everybody has an experience like this, to give it to us in such a manner that we can't go back and research, it makes it difficult. And that's why she's
Yeah.
asking for that phone call, so we can look at each incident and make corrections in the routing. Now, some of it is due to the fact that you're on a shared ride system. They might have to pick you up first on the way to pick up another passenger.
in
who
order to
has
make
to
the
be in
window- in
Minneapolis
order to
by
make
1
the window
o'clock,
time.
and then drop you off. So to you, the routing may not be right, but as a shared ride system, we're ensuring everybody's getting to their place by their appointment time.
Right, and
So
then
there are
make sure
different
they-
things that are factoring into each incident that happens. And it's not a general, just poor routing or dispatchers not working together. There are other elements that are playing into that.
What they're trying to do, Claudia, and without her telling you that, is they're trying to make the window time make sense, right? And if they're out of the window time, then they're losing money, not only on your ride, but that other ride that they're out of the window time. So then they're consistently losing money along that way. So what they try to do is at some point, they try to close that up. And sometimes we get caught up in that window time when it doesn't make sense to us, but it makes sense to their system.
I just, 2 weeks ago, there was a passenger on my bus who was literally yelling at the driver.
Because they just passed her house or something.
We went on the opposite side of the world to pick somebody else up, and we were heading up north. And we went down south, down by Edina, before we went back north. We thought we were going back home. It's like, what am I doing in Edina?
Yeah, that's a perfect example to call in so that we can investigate and see what happened with that route.
Well, I still think there's communication issues. When there's 3 buses coming up to pick up 3 people going to the same address,
Yeah, that's.
there's a communication problem.
That's a problem with routing. That's pretty,
There is a problem to that one,
right.
Yeah.
yeah. But that would be something to look at in the future,
Oh, yeah.
discussion.
Well, keep talking, Claudia, for 2 more minutes, because I'm gonna say, let the record show that we're gonna end our meeting at 2 o'clock. And I've ended the meeting with a half hour on time. And I gave you a half hour of your time back today. And that doesn't mean that we get to all stand out and yell at our Metro Mobility drivers because we want them to come sooner, right? Because now we wanna go home sooner. But
So when do we go to the Capitol and tell them that we need more money for transportation?
tomorrow or today, you can come up there today too.
You won't find it, you won't be successful for this year because it's not working on that. They're way below in their budget, so. They're
Well,
taking-
just so you know, their
Yeah,
budget targets haven't even come out yet. They were scheduled to be out about 3 weeks ago, but because we had our snafu as to who has power and who has committee chairs and stuff like that, we weren't so concerned about getting those budget targets out. So those budget targets should be out by the end of this week, the beginning of next week. And then that's when the real work begins, because we have constitutionally, we have to be adjourned by, what is it, May 20th?
Yeah.
May 19th.
May 19th or May 18th?
And I thought it was the 20th.
Well, I've got friends that are gonna bail me out if I need to.
But by law, we don't have, we constitutionally don't have to do anything until June 30th.
Right.
So technically,
Fiscally.
because our fiscal budget doesn't end until June 30th.
Yep.
So we're good until June 30th.
And then it will be a government shutdown.
Be a government shutdown, but it won't happen in June. It might happen a little bit later than that, because we're gonna extend the government for a little bit. We always do. We extend essential services so that people in nursing homes and people that are dying or are going to the other side don't automatically just die on us. So we do extend those services for a period of several weeks, and then we shut down the government after we tell everybody we were gonna do it to begin with.
Yeah.
But I don't believe it's gonna happen. I'm gonna tell the governor it doesn't need to happen. I'm gonna tell the governor he does not need to balance the budget on the backs of people with disabilities. He should not do that. And I, as one of his outspoken spokespeople, he should know better, right? Because if he does do that, I'm gonna tell him I'm sending Claudia after him.
Trouble over at the Capitol.
Because he knows my family on a first name basis, and frankly, I think he's getting tired of saying, hi, Daryl, hi, Nikki, hi, Daryl, hi, Nikki. So I'm gonna tell him to start saying, hi, Claudia, hi, Claudia.
Thanks a lot.
She's down, I see you down there sometimes.
She's down there all the time even when I tell security not to let her in, she's sneaking in somehow.
Security guard actually took him seriously.
Yeah, he did too.
Almost got kicked out.
I said, no, it's okay.
Like the time that I stood in front of you at the dome.
I've been thinking.
I thought for sure those people were gonna call the security on me that day.
Well, so given that, I need a motion for adjournment.
I make motion.
Aye.
And there's no discussion on that, so we're done.
Okay, I go for it.
You just scared Kevin.